Hopefully I am now sharing my screen. Can people see my slides?
I can.
Yes.
Perfect. In that case, I will start. I will try to take 20 minutes or fewer, and then it is over to you, Trinidad, if that is okay. And
Okay.
also, if everyone agrees, I am recording. If anyone has any objections, please get in touch with me and we will destroy the recording, but some people couldn't join today and are keen on catching this one after the fact. I should start saying that Peter Droege, who is author of the book, or rather editor of the book that gave rise to this whole webinar series, was had a commitment, a clash with commitments with Brussels, so he could not be here. He really wanted to, but that is one of the reasons why I am very keen on having a recording today. He sends his apologies. Now, if you were intent to be at the webinar about transport for intelligent environments, you are clearly in the correct place. One of our speakers today will be Trinidad Fernandez. The other one will be myself. I will take the liberty to start so you can then close with the grand finale, Trinidad, if that's all right. And let's see. I am going to be talking about low carbon mobilities in proto-smart, smart, and post-smart cities, building on 25 years of experience with transport in intelligent environments. Although I will say the experience is not all mine. I have been working in this for only 10. But I wanted to draw attention to the first edition of the book. Intelligent Environments, the first edition was published in 1997. And if you look at this bit that I have on screen, and pretty much if you manage to get the book, I think it is available online these days. You may be able to find it through your library. You will find that the way of thinking about technology and environment, intelligent environments in cities back then is very relevant to the way we think today. Maybe the terminology was different. Maybe back then we would be talking of telematics, when today we are talking about smart cities and sensors. But still, if you see the way, these are Peter's words, there he was thinking about the relationship of technology, environment, and society. People 25 years ago already knew that this was going to change society in ways that we are only starting to really see now. This is a bit of the table of contents of the original book. I bring it to your attention because Stephen Potter, who presented at the previous iteration of this webinar, and is with us today, so Steve, please free to jump in at any time, had a book chapter back then, Telematics and Transport Policy, Making the Connection. I will share the recording of the previous webinar if you want to learn more about that one, but it reinforces my point. I think today we would not be talking about telematics and transport policy. We would be talking about smart cities and transport policy. But here is a bit that's wrote, and it's not necessarily about transport, but it's very much about what we are living today when we are meeting over Zoom. Teleworking, the problem of teleworking, when it is difficult to maintain team unity and to get everyone to feel included when we're all working remotely, when we need to have a room for an office and there are conflicts with domestic life. My cats will be the conflict if they come in. And Steve says partial teleworking 3 days a week would address these problems, but it's the worst of both worlds. This is exactly what I do today. So prophetic. And he also mentions the concept of the local telecommuting office. This is the local telecommuting office today, Milton Keynes. But anyway, coming back to transport. Back then, the book said that there was a very real danger that the technologies would be just new technologies layered on top of old policies, old practices. The example provided back then was electronic route and parking guidance, what we would call these days Waze or just our sat-nav. The concern was that these technologies would allow us to make more efficient use of roads. And efficiency sounds good in principle, But in practice, if we are using roads more efficiently, what that means is that you have more cars on the roads. Ultimately, that's what efficiency means. And also that means that motorists are guided efficiently on previously quiet residential back streets, which is, again, exactly what our sat-navs are doing today. Steve, if I am not mistaken, back then you were just uh, being prophetic, almost speculating, let's say it, not to make it sound so grandiose, but this is exactly what happened. These technologies are allowing us to use the roads more efficiently and to invade people's back streets more efficiently. On our left, what weighs those? But well, we are not today nor here today to talk about the first edition of the book. If anything, we will talk about the second edition, or we should. Here is the second edition. This one was published just this year. Trinidad's book chapter is there, number 3. Our book chapter is Steve's, but also mine. I happen to be in the part that it's in the everyone else in the ellipsis. The one at the bottom, Stephen Potter, James Warren. The one that you cannot see would be Miguel Valdez, that's me, and then Matthew Cook. But that was our chapter towards an intelligent mobility regime. That one is a good opportunity to reflect on how the demand-responsive transport that was established 30 years ago in Milton Keynes, when you could just dial a phone, the ones with the old rotary dial, became a very connected, very smart thing that you can summon from your smartphone, and that has this complete artificial intelligence, very smart system to create a system that looks like a bus, but you can summon like a taxi, and that way you can actually share a vehicle and use the smart technologies to actually use not only roads more efficiently, but vehicles more efficiently and take vehicles off the road. But that is what Steve spoke about last week. So for more on that, look at the video. Again, I will email it to the participants. And now I finally get to what I really mean to be talking about today. It's Milton Keynes, the place where I live, and when I have been doing my actual research as a smart city in the making, since its old days as a pre-smart city, founded in the 67, it was built by a master plan, and this tends to be the case with smart cities. Even if you retrofit a city as a smart city, there tends to be a big plan to make that happen. In this case, the plan for Milton Keynes started years before smart cities were anything anyone would have dreamt about. But it was a plan for efficient living, for pedestrians, for walkable cities, for rational cities. Again, logics that are in a way proto-smart and became even more so during the oil crisis in the 70s. And this was has been continuously reframed in the 60s, since the 70s, and recently in response to the climate emergency. Since its foundation, again being proto-smart, Milton Keynes has been positioned as a testbed city. And although when we say smart city, I think, correct me if I am wrong, but I think when we say smart city, the first thing we think these days is big data. But also a big element of being a smart city is being a test bed, being an experimental city. The city that is doing what every other city is doing is not smart. Smart implies being one step ahead. And Milton Keynes, even before big data was a thing, was always trying to be one step ahead, doing experiments like the dial-a-ride that I mentioned, the first solar-powered house in the 70s, the pioneering energy standards that were pioneering in the 70s in Milton Keynes are now the energy standards across all the United Kingdom. And that is another thing that I think defines the smart city, doing something for learning and for disseminating elsewhere. Because if you are smart only for the sake of yourself, if you are not generating learning that others can use, that's not quite smart. That is selfish, I would say. And well, this I frame as pre-smart, 70s pre-smart, proto-smart. It became much closer to the smart that we know today, starting in the 2000s, because of a combination of austerity and climate change. Austerity made it so that local governments, such as Milton Keynes, did not have money from national governments to address their problems. And they didn't have money themselves. Local governments, at least in the UK, tend to be very poor. So what they had to do was to make themselves attractive to big business. And in this case, that means big computer business, big information and computer technology business. And to do that, and to address the climate emergency that was happening at that time, they went to these big organizations and told them, ask them, how can you use our city to prove that your technology can solve our problems and therefore solve the problems of all cities like us, lowering your carbon footprint, all carbon footprint, that will make us a demonstrator so that the products that you sell and you perfect here. And we will cope with the pain of testing something new, because new things often go wrong once it works in Milton Keynes. Once you say Milton Keynes went through the pain of making these experiments, you can sell it elsewhere. And all these documents, I will again share this information, so don't feel like you have to make notes, are documents that if you look at them closely are about how the local government can work with private business to lower the carbon footprint more often than not using technology. And this approach worked. I don't know if it is working for addressing the climate emergency, but it is working for attracting investment in Milton Keynes. And it's a characteristic of smart cities. They are often made as a way of attracting funding, revitalizing economies. This still in what I would call the pre-smart age, we had 80 million for deploying charging infrastructures for electric vehicles. Then we had 13 million for developing a smart grid. This is just a smart energy grid. You may be wondering, what does it have to do with transport? Because today I promised to talk about transport and I have 7 minutes to get to that point. But the point is, Milton Keynes built a reputation about an innovative place and built an infrastructure for innovation and a culture for innovation, which eventually unlocked this 16 million Smart Cities program, MK Smart. This started as part of the Low Carbon Living program, which was a big data approach, oh, apologies for the typo, approach to smart, which is, I think, characteristic of smart in the 2010 or thereabouts, when you have a central data hub connected to sensors all across the city and a big data hub to collect and make available this large amount of data from many diverse sources, including energy, water, uh, including also what would it call the digital footprint, the data that traces of data that will live as we go on with our lives. You swipe your card in the bank, you left some data about where you were, what you did, but also transport, importantly, and going to the point. The original premise of a project such as MK Smart and overall of big data in smart cities is that real-time information about urban flows will allow our cities to use those resources, those infrastructures more efficiently, lowering our carbon footprint and also lowering demand for expensive infrastructure. Here the point being, if local authorities can figure out how to use roads more efficiently, they don't have to build as many roads and they don't have to use so much of their poor budget, because building sensors is cheaper than building new roads. Similarly, energy companies, if they can use a smart grid project to balance energy, they don't have to build a new power plant, and those things are expensive. The idea is using digital efficiencies to lower the cost or to improve the efficiency of expensive physical infrastructures. Now we'll go to the project where I actually did my research. This was Transport's work package within MK Smart. We were trying to do cloud-enabled mobility. What we were trying to do, this was about 2014, 2016, was a mobile phone application for making busyness visible, for figuring out where were the busiest roads in Milton Keynes so people could reroute around them. And we were to support this, creating a sensing network, an urban network that would provide real-time information so that people could voluntarily manage their demand. Spoiler alert, we couldn't finish building this. If anyone around in the audience is a gamer, they will know that this screenshot is not from our business system. It's from SimCity, the video game, the version of the 2000s. And you could say that smart cities are in a way a very video gamey way of thinking about the city, or the way I was thinking about it at least was, let's see what is happening so we can move the parameters, move people elsewhere, or hope that people naturally want to go elsewhere. Once we went to the interview, it was pretty much what Steve told us some 25 years ago. Number one, when people knew this is a busy time, this is a busy road, they told us, I cannot do anything else. I have to go there. This is where I go to my commute. Having this information made available to me doesn't serve any purpose. And in the few instances when it actually seemed to serve a purpose and allowed people to say, oh, instead of going to this busy road, I will reroute to the one next to it. What we ultimately did was annoy people who lived in a road that used to be quiet. And now everyone has to go in, wants to go in the quiet roads. And oh, why are they doing this to me? This road used to be so nice. On the bright side, the infrastructure that we created, even if our premise was wrong, turned out to be quite productive. Also, the motion map concept was rendered obsolete by Waze, a 1 billion acquisition by Google of a system that already did the same thing. They had 1 billion overall. We had 16 million to split across all work packages. We never had a chance. But the sensor network that we deployed was very useful, the vivacity sensors that could detect the busyness in the city. Those remain in use to this day, have been sent to other cities. So one point about the smart city and the transition to beyond smart. Our dreams of big data did not work, but set infrastructure for things that are starting to work. So I think one important thing about being smart is being adaptable. This is our experiments. The smart city is an experimental city, and experiments do not always work. If we knew that they were going to work, they wouldn't be experiments, and we would not be getting experimental funding for doing it. But anyway, this one didn't work. The city council, back then it was Milton Keynes Council, now it is Milton Keynes City Council. We were made a city last year. Move away from the original vision of the smart city based on big data and management systems for cities. They say, they quote as literally as I can remember, I think we have the transcript of this. They said, you know, giant control centers with lots of screens and all the data stuff, all of this was never going to work for them. They adjust their strategy accordingly. They moved away from big data, from making it available to citizens to making it available to control centers. And they decided, let's apply to specific areas, such as transport, artificial intelligence. How about we have robots? How about we have driverless cars? And this is what we actually have these days in the city. The robots, delivery robots, remain with us today. And you may think that this is not a smart city, this doesn't have a control center, this does not have big data beyond it. But this kind of vehicle, this kind of robot, requires the data infrastructure, requires high connectivity, and also these data-hungry devices are also great producers of data. When you have robots, like these delivery robots, I use them all the time. You just say, oh, I forgot the milk. Let's get milk from my smartphone. And the robot comes to your door and brings you the milk for £1, I think last time I checked. But anyway, as the robot is coming to deliver my milk, the robot is surrounded by cameras, so it is a roving sensor system wandering around the city. So it is a very data hungry system and also a very data productive system. So it's a new form of artificial intelligence, urban, system. This photo, I took it myself about 3 days ago, driverless bus in Milton Keynes. It has a driver for purposes of safety, but you can see the driver doing this, what a show off to say, hey, look, ma, no hands. Because if there is an emergency right now because of the regulation, the driver has to be ready to take the wheel. But right now, drives itself. And anyway, sorry, I am 1 minute over my time and I don't want to encroach us on Trinidad's time. Just to say, right now the smart city is becoming the artificial intelligence city, digital twins, and the big data that we couldn't manage, that the cities could not manage. Artificial intelligence can make sense of it. Like the Santander CEO, I was at the reception of this summit, not at the big summit because that was for really big VIPs only, but at the reception, the Santander chief data officer told us this artificial intelligence can make sense of 100, what did they say, 100,000 data points. A human could never do it. I cannot tell you why they did it, but we know that it's reaching decisions that are useful to us. So big data, my point, the smart city, it was overwhelming when we tried to do it in Milton Keynes, but post-smart artificial intelligence, it will generate vast amount of data and it will make sense of data itself. So we are giving a second shot to big data smart after we thought that it was at the end. Maybe technology was not there.
Miguel, you went mute. I cannot hear you.
So weird. I think I
That's
was just
better.
trying to stop sharing and I clicked the wrong thing. But I hope you heard me everything until it said thank you. Please don't tell me I was mute the whole 20 minutes. But if you heard everything all right, I only wanted to say thank you. I will stop sharing. And without further ado, Trinidad, are you ready to start? And please let's save questions for after.
Okay, actually, yeah, I'm ready. I just wanted to ask if you, because someone wrote in the chat that had a question, and I didn't know if you wanted to.
Let's move it to the end if that is all right, so we can have a time.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it at the end.
There is a chance
Okay.
that you will address their question.
Yeah, just let me know if you can see my screen. That will be
Clearly,
very
I
good.
can see very well.
Okay, perfect. Then I can just start and try to be brief so we can catch up and use the end of the meeting to discuss questions and discussion. So first of all, thank you for the invitation. My name is Trinidad Fernandez. I'm head of urban economy innovation at the Fraunhofer Institute for Industrial Engineering in Stuttgart, Germany. And I was the coordinator of the Triangulum project. I will let you know while in the slides what it is about. So let's jump in directly to what it is. So Triangulum was one of the first European smart city flagship project. It was part of the Horizon 2020 funding grants of the European Commission, part of one of the calls that was called SCC1 or Smart City and Communities Lighthouse Programs. It started in 2015, ended in 2020, and we had a constellation of lighthouse cities and follower cities, as you can see in the screen, and we kind of triangulate them, so that's why the name Triangulum. And also because the project aims to have lighthouse cities that demonstrate, follower cities that replicate, but throughout also disseminate all the learnings of the program. We had in total 22 partners in 6 countries. I will show you in the next slide who the partners were. And we had a focus on energy, mobility, ICT, and governance. And within the book chapter, we describe one specific use case that was on ICT and energy. So I will be presenting this within the slides as well. So it's not changing. 1 second. Okay, so about this initiative of the European Commission that I was telling you, this SCC1, what it stands for, as you see here in the screen, I highlighted Triangulum, but it's part of a large family. I mean, at the beginning, it was only 3 projects that started in 2015 with us. And then this family got larger and larger and ended having 18 projects. That is the one that you see in the screen, Triangulum being one of the first of it. we had 6 cities, but the others also have their between 6 and 8 cities each, and you can see the coverage of the different lighthouse and follow cities. So we had a wide coverage throughout Europe with test beds in all these 3 sectors that I was mentioning: energy, ICT, and mobility. And therefore, it was very interesting because we could, within this partnership, like not only the Droege partnership, but with the other sister project, always exchange in terms of lessons learned and try to drive urban transitions towards climate neutrality in Europe at a big scale. I don't know why I'm having troubles changing the slide, but yeah. As I was saying, we had the 22 partners here you see in a nutshell who were working with us through this 5-year project. The project was led by Fraunhofer EAO. I was the project coordinator, and we had a strong partnership in the 3 lighthouse cities: Manchester, Eindhoven, and Stavanger. And we had a replication program with 3 cities, one in Spain, in Germany, and in Czech Republic. Here a bit about how our work plan looked like. So we started working very intensively with the lighthouse cities and the planning of their implementation. Then we went to their implementation part. Actually, this figure is also available in the book. And also explain a bit more in detail than what I will explain now, and due to the time constraints. But just in a nutshell, I don't know what happened. Okay, so we had the planning and the implementation in the lighthouse cities, and while we started the implementation, we started something that we call the training, mission, and follower cities, that was aiming to first, well, we did an assessment in each one of the implementation cities while they were implementing, to identify where were the challenges, the limitations, the gaps or in knowledge, or maybe in policies, etc., and how they succeed with the implementation of their pilots. And I don't know why it's keep on changing the slide. And then for this understanding, we also create like a monitoring framework with some on-site visits, and we started designing implementation strategies for the follower cities. That it was actually what at the end the follower cities end having as the major outcome of the project, and well, develop a replication tool, which I will refer to at the very end of my presentation. So just for you to know, that was the work plan. These were the 3 lighthouse cities that we work on. I will focus on today's presentation, and as in the book, in the case study of Eindhoven, and one solution in particular. So in Eindhoven, we were working with 2 main districts. One was the Stripe S district, that it was a mixed-use district, it was where the former Philips headquarters were. So there was a lot of work here in refurbishment, also cleaning and renovation, and also cleaning of the soil of this area. And the second one was a residential district where we work also with social housing. That is actually the one that I will be presenting you today, that it's called the Eckhart Barbrook. And I don't know why I'm having so many troubles with the changing, but when I want to change, it doesn't change. Okay, now it changed. So just in a nutshell, and for you to know like a bit the scope and the broadness of the solutions that were implemented here, we have from smart street lighting and smart lampposts to visualization of data platforms. We work also with some solutions on smart mobility and smart mobility management, renewable energy. Some of them I already mentioned with this sanitation or the recovery of the soil. But I will show you a very interesting one that has also a very strong citizen engagement component. That it's the one that is also described in the book, that it's called Womb Connect. or renovation using a 3D BIM tool. So how did this work? So we had one of our partners was designing this tool that, as you see here, it's almost like when you play SimCity or SimTown a bit. Maybe some of you remember about this video game or computer game. As an architect, I of course played it a lot. But the cool thing is that, well, they created a blueprint of all the houses of this area. Each of them, as you see, like, even though they're similar, each of them has their own quality. So they created a 3D model of it. And then they started, as you see here in the illustration below, they started creating different packages on how they could renovate. So, for example, if you want to change your insulation in the roof, or if you want to put PV panels, or if you want to change your windows, etc. So they created several of measures that tenants could choose in order to improve the energy within their houses, the energy consumption, and also the comfort of their own houses. And the cool thing is that they created like several measures, and they work together, the housing company, the solution, or the IT provider of this software, and the tenants, and they were tenant by tenant offering the service, and also, as in this SimCity video game, playing a bit with which are the options that they can choose. Like, as you see here on the screen, I brought it also on purpose, this example. If you want, for example, to create a second floor and maybe expand, and this kind of stuff. But the cool thing is it was not only that you can visualize it, but that it also came, as you see also in this illustration, it came with how many watts you were saving, how much money that will reduce to your overall rent. And also some tips as well as tenant that you can do in order to reduce your energy bill or reduce your energy consumption as well. It also includes, I mean, I'm always talking about energy because I think it's one of the major topics, especially in Europe nowadays with winter and also with the Ukrainian and the oil crisis last year. But here there were also some measures on water consumption and the reutilization of water. This was also included. And it was very, well, at the beginning, it was very challenging process because, like, when we designed this idea, we thought, okay, tenants will be, of course, super interested in investing and participating and so on. However, at the beginning, it was very hard to convince tenants because at the end, it depends on their own, like if it's a good time for renovating. They also needed to invest a bit. It was partially funded by the commissions. So there were many things that we didn't have in consideration, and that took a bit of time, especially at the beginning, to, I would say, convince the first tenants to trust in the solution and to apply them, because it was not only to choose one. Part of the program was also that these solutions will be built. And as you see in the picture, this is one of the renovated houses funded by the Triangle Project. And at the beginning, we started with an aim of 200 that we need to lower down within the project timeframe. It was a bit less. I think 80 only could be funded before we started the monitoring phase of the project. However, after the project ended, this number increased a lot, and also without EU funding, tenants continue very interested in the solution and to improve and renovate their houses with their own money. So that was very interesting. That at the beginning was a bit challenging to convince, and we started with maybe 7 or 8. And then when they were get convinced and also trust that the solution works and that it can be a very benefit of them, then the interest increased massively. So that's a bit. You can also read a bit about this specific solution in the book. But I also wanted to use the last 4 minutes that I have to give you a bit insight of the project itself and some things that I think it's very relevant. I will just put all the arrows so we can have it in the discussion as well. I said, like, one thing of the Triangulum project that I believe it could be very beneficial and it will be great to discuss is that we had the use case of lighthouse city. So we were learning, but we have two types of learning. So one, it was with what I was telling you, this implementation strategy with the follower cities, like the follower cities asking the lighthouse city, hey, how did you implement, how did, for example, your organization enable this kind of urban transformation to happen, or these technologies to be deployed on a large scale in your city? And from the other side, we had that we call it the customer-centric implementation strategy point of view of how to compile these lessons learned. But from the other side, and I think also very related to what Miguel was saying at the beginning, with the smart cities and the understanding that smart cities is very related to technology development. It's about understanding how the technologies that we were applying could be implemented elsewhere because of their technological features. So that's also something that we use this implementation program as a way to reduce risk of future implementation of the technologies that we were testing. And therefore, also I would like to highlight here that one thing in Triangulum, and what it's mostly describing in the book, is the implementation. Within Triangulum, we have around like 69, 70 use cases, but while implementing, we realized the importance that expertise building and training has. We had several workshops and sessions together with all of our cities, not only the lighthouse, and that helped a lot to build the momentum of smart cities and initiate the urban transformation in all cities. Then we have also monitoring and measurability to show the impact of the solutions, not only implementing, but also leverage on the potential that they have for the same cities, but for and also for others. And how this project itself, Triangulum, and I will give you a few examples in the next slide, can act as a smart city accelerators. So in a nutshell, here a bit about the use cases. So we have I said like 70, but it was 59, sorry, that was a typo, on energy, ICT, mobility. So we tested very large scale different solutions. And as you see here, also a very almost equal distributed in the 3 cities. And we created some additional use cases that we initiated. That is my last slide. That is a bit, a few spin-offs that started in the project. So maybe I would just here highlight 2. One is the Nordic Edge Expo that started with the project in Stavanger. And it's still one of the biggest conferences in the Nordics in smart cities. And it still takes place. In the case of Babel, that's a spin-off actually from Fraunhofer that got initiated also by the project, and it's one of the most successful and I think fastest growing startups in whole Germany. Many projects, I mean, here I have summarized a few, but many projects have been initiated because of the partnership initiatives within the cities. There were also some follower cities, maybe I will close with this, some follower cities that implemented with their own money solutions that in the lighthouse cities were implemented. And last but not least, and I didn't have it here in the slide, but I wanted to say also follower cities that became lighthouse cities. That's the example of Leipzig, that in our project they were follower, and in one project that is the Sparks project, they became a lighthouse, and now they're implementing also with EU funding. So yeah, that was it. I think I managed to save also some minutes, and yeah, happy to continue in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting, and I very much enjoyed that notion of the follower city becoming a lighthouse instead, a chain reaction of smartness. Thank you so much. And I see that there was a question in the chat. And
Yeah, I
it's
just
a
wanted
new
to articulate it further. So what we're talking about here is transport within smart cities and smart environment. So my question is, from the point of view of policymakers, because obviously, you know, if you're a transport company, you want to maximize your income. But from the point of view of policymaker, how do I prioritize investing and supporting transport strategies, mobility, and smart cities against instead working on internet-based applications? Because if you consider that, for example, we can collaborate with people in Australia, perhaps if the investment is maximized, then we may get to holographic transmission like in Star Wars, and therefore then you got a chance to work on a global scale, so work with academics in other countries, and at the same time you might reduce the demand for transport, and therefore automatically you reduce the impact of transport from the environmental perspective because people travel less.
Indeed, allow me to jump in, Mauricio, just because
Yeah, go for it. Adana, ask a question.
20-second intervention. Indeed, I think the best form of transport is the shared. No, the best form of transport at all is the one you don't take. If you can stay at home and teleconference, and that works for you, it's perfect. And that's also why I like delivery robots. If I can have the pint of milk coming to me on a robot that weighs 50 kilos, instead of driving a 300 kilo car to the shops, that's perfect. Steve, I was hoping you would say something because you wrote about this 20 something years ago. Please go ahead.
Okay. The thought I had in my mind was a phrase that came to my head. I'm not sure if I used it back then. See if I use it again 25 years ago. I was quite interested in the term lighthouse cities because the concept of a lighthouse is to steer you away from making an appalling mistake and hitting the rocks. I'm slightly puzzled by the use of the term lighthouse as something that you copy, that you go towards. You'd actually go away from a lighthouse, but never mind. My thought was a different phrase, which is stepping stone cities, because one thing that really interests me is the transition path. There's plenty of technology companies out there and concepts there of the final technological perfect solution and no means to get towards it. And I think what is really interesting in the cases that we've been involved with in Milton Keynes, and I think some of those examples in Triangulum, are they act as stepping stone cities. They're cities that take you in the correct direction. They don't take you all the way, but they give you the basis to then get onto the next stepping stone and eventually get across the barrier of sustainability to where you're actually going to achieve. So I think actually Milton Keynes and others have actually helped to demonstrate, and I think this leads on to follower cities, that these experiments can work. They are practical, they attract investment, and they actually take us in the right path towards the sustainability or what other inclusivity goals that we're trying to achieve. So perhaps I think there's a nuance in the phraseology there, perhaps we need to grab.
Yes, maybe if I can jump in here, I will address your question right away, Stefan, but then I would like to also add something to the previous discussion because I found it quite interesting. The term lighthouse city is something that the Commission, and I would love also to add something on this, on terminology in general as well, that we realize while in the project. That's something that it was like given by the commission. Actually, they created this SCC1 lighthouse group, etc. And in some cases, some projects use the word also forerunning city, because we also saw this. I mean, yeah, lighthouse. What does it really mean? Like, it's just like, okay, maybe where everyone should aim to, but again, I mean, we see it also in this with the cities that we have as lighthouse cities. They were also very either big or very developed cities. So so I fully agree with you that maybe this terminology was not very like what is meant with this program. And well, Stepping Stone is a great could be a great addition. But I wanted also to bring to you the discussion. It's also what happens with us while in the project with the replication. So at the beginning, when the call of the commission went out, they have the word replication, but no one know what replication was about. Like, is it just like the solution we're testing here just to put it in the other city and that's it? And there is where we as a project start learning that, and therefore the two approaches, like one, it was like, I would say, to tick the box, okay, we try to see how this solution can be implemented elsewhere from the technology point of view. But to go a bit one step further, it was like, for us, it's like, what actually needs to happen in a city to create this change in smart cities and create like a real smart city strategy? Is it possible? It's not what needs to change from the governance perspective, from maybe their organizational. In the case of Leipzig, that I was saying that they became a lighthouse city, one of the first thing that they describe in their strategy is that they needed to change their structural or organigram within the city administration in order to host this kind of projects, and they did at the end. And that enabled them at the end to become a lighthouse city. Well, lighthouse city, let me put it with brackets. So yeah, I fully agree with you. But as said, like, there are many of these terminologies. I think also nowadays with the term carbon neutrality or circularity, they're a bit like, also again needs a bit more digestion and definition. But just one last thing to the question before. I just wanted to highlight that at least in the current program that I'm coordinating now, another project that it's on one of the first Horizon Mission cities program from this 100 cities mission of the Commission. And there, for example, at the beginning, there were a lot of measures because of the technology enabling like that people doesn't need to meet so often and so on. So that we could skip some meetings, or we can like avoid traveling and this kind of stuff. But in my experience, that's something like now it seems like Corona was never there. We can still benefit, like as today, to have a webinar, to meet and use the technologies. But transport-wise, we're still working very as before the pandemic. So we still need to consider strong and clean mobility solutions. But as I said, that's from my perspective what I see nowadays in the European Commission project scene.
No, I agree. I don't see any further questions in the chat, but if anyone has them, please raise your hand or just type them in or unmute yourself and jump in. But meanwhile, let's have this conversation, because I must confess, I organized this whole webinar for the sake of these 20 minutes of conversation. So your conversation about how practices don't really change. Do we have the technology? No, because of the pandemic, the teleconferencing technologies advanced so much. But in the end, we keep going to the office, we keep doing the same things. And when I first tried to address Mauricio's question, I said that the best journey is the one we don't take. But when that is not possible, at least the second best journey is the one we share. Like in the driverless buses that we are testing in this city now, I think ideally, if I have to go to the office anyway, because the practice of going to the office has not changed as much as we would like, if I have to do it, maybe I can share a bus with people so it is convenient to me, as convenient as the car would be. But I am not moving half a ton of steel just for myself. If we are moving that half ton of steel for 6 people, for 12 people, no, it makes a bit more sense. And I suspect that's ultimately what smart transport is going to do. When it cannot make transport disappear, like with the robots or with teleconferencing, it has to make us share transport. Because if it makes just our single car use more efficient, as Steve said 25 years ago, if you make it more efficient, people will use more of it. And in the end, we will just end with more cars on the streets, not fewer. So I think that's going to be smart if we don't change our practices in some way, and changing or sharing practices using artificial intelligence driverless cars may be easier than breaking out of the habit of going to the office.
I fully agree, Miguel. And I think if I can contribute here, for example, in the current project that I have, we do benefit as today of the exchange that digital tools enables, also with different partners, different countries, different cities. That wouldn't be possible. I mean, maybe with a phone call, but still. But that helps us that when we meet, it's very, very productive. It's about the exchange. Like people tend to make the most of the time when they meet now than before, and that's something that it's, well, thanks to what happened in the pandemic, but also thanks to the development of technology as well.
Perfect. Now, since there are no new questions in the chat, I would like to go back to something that you said that is also relevant to my interest. You said that at first people did not believe that things were actually going to happen. You show them the screen, it looks all very nice, and they say, nah, it's all nice, but Milton Keynes identified a very similar risk. In one of their strategy documents, they said, we have a risk of being known as a city that tries a lot of things and nothing sticks. And I think it happens a lot with smart cities. Hopefully not yours, not ours, but very often a smart city has a 2-year program to do something. They run out of money and the sensors go offline, the website goes offline, and it is as if nothing had happened. And after that happens 2 or 3 times in a city, people just don't believe it is going to happen and they tune out. Fortunately, I love that in your example, they found someone to continue this. Private investment, if I understood correctly, was able to give some, to continue that trajectory. And something quite similar happens here in Milton Keynes. Maybe your data hub didn't work, but the sensors remain, people see them around, they are used for something else. So going to the point, my question is, how do you feel about the ability to give continuity to projects when we know there is an end of funding? I am sure Triangulum was only for so many years, but you had a strategy so things would stay in place after funding ran out, right?
Yes, that's a very good question. Well, within this implementation strategy in the follower cities, we created something that was called like with the use case analysis, where we said, well, what are the challenges, limitations, etc. And part of it was like which kind of business models can be used for the city to implement either at their own funds or maybe through local investment. And also, when developing this strategy, we didn't work only with the city. We work with different local stakeholders from private, public, and academic sector, and also civil society. So that helped also a lot to create this momentum and of opportunity, not only from the city perspective or the public sector perspective, but also for the private sector artists to say, okay, well, the city is willing to invest in this specific area. So to diversify a bit the opportunities and create economic opportunities for these solutions to be in place. And a similar approach we had in the lighthouse cities with this understanding of the implementation. we also create the business plan behind. I mean, of course, a big part of it was financed by EU funding, but how cities could, like the city, but also other cities could implement a similar solution. What are the best financial mechanisms or business plans, etc. So that was included. And yeah, one of the examples, that's why I brought it, was this video that was implemented in 2 cities with their own investment.
Perfect. Thank you. And indeed, in my presentation, I called this an experiment, but the experiment has to have a plan to it, a business case, because otherwise people feel like we're just using them for the experiment. No one wants to be a test subject. If for something that is going to stay and benefit them in the long term.
Yeah, that's why we also highlight a lot about the importance of monitoring of results and leverage about the impact, because this is the way that we see, at least from the scientific perspective, that these solutions can benefit from other cities that could be interested in the same solution, or even the city seeing, well, what are my economic, environmental, but also societal impact that this solution can bring to my city, if it's worth it to run it on the large scale and invest on it.
Perfect, thank you. Now, we're almost out of time. I wonder if anyone, Steve, Trinidad, or anyone in the audience has one final question or one final thought. If not, I guess we can take this time to have another cup of tea. 30 minutes left.
Maybe, I mean, if there are no questions, I have one remark to one part of your previous question that I didn't address, that you mentioned the tenants not willing to at the beginning, or not very engaged in the solution, a very resistance, etc. Not to dive deep in the question, in the use case of Triangulum, but in general, how important is to, whenever we're working in technology solutions or in urban infrastructure solutions, generally speaking, how important is to bring the citizens on board, ideally from the very beginning, and to build this trust for them to be in pro and supporting this development. I've seen it in, well, it's not my project, but in another city that they were implementing a solution by then with routers and sensors that needed the password of each house Wi-Fi, and people were like super hesitant, and then you need to put the sensor, let it at home, and people were like, what is this? Like, it's a bomb. Like, I don't know, very, very, very difficult to work. I mean, now technology, it's quite different. But still, I think it's very important when we're working with smart city technology to always think that at the end of the day, customers and citizens are it's a big part of the work that we need to do and adapt the solutions for them, and not the other way around.
Indeed,
that's very important, actually. I'm reminded of the way in which the average Midwestern American welcomed the introduction of smart meters, which was basically to use them for shotgun practice. But that's perhaps an extreme reaction, but it's also one in our age of misinformation and myth, and you know, which is occurring all the time, the conspiracy theories around, that we do actually need to engage with people about the use of the new technologies, because otherwise there are such powerful forces out there that are going to get those myths running around and totally scupper any benefits we can achieve.
And here I must confess, you will remember, Steve, that we kept naming of presentations things like big data without Big Brother, because in a way we were aware of this, and maybe we amplified it inadvertently, because when we say we are not Big Brother, people
I know.
This person
I
is
think
Big Brother, and it's
actually,
helpful.
Miguel, that's the subject for another one of these webinars.
Strongly
Which
agree,
may be
because
something to run with. It's so topical and so relevant. Yeah.
perfect. And speaking of next webinars, with this we end this one. We will take a break over the holidays. As soon as we are on the other side of the holidays, we will email everyone with a reminder of the next one, because this is second of a series. We hope to keep going for the foreseeable future. Thank you so much, Trinidad, for being here today. And thank you so much, Steve, for being the unofficial third speaker today. I think I forced you into that role. Thank you so much for it, joining us.
Thank you for the invitation. Happy to contribute. Bye bye. Have a
Thank you
great
so much,